Good morning. Grace chatting from Western Women Mean Business here, and I am delighted to be here to have a conversation with you about, is it time for Western women to save the world? And if not now, when? So I'm really delighted that you've joined me, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from. And yeah, the question arises when I say this to people. It's taken from the Dalai Lama talking about the world will be saved by Western women. And he said that in 2010 at the Nobel Peace Awards. There were about, I think there were about eight women who had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he made that statement then. So, I've talked about what he might have meant by that in various other videos, so I won't go into it now. But people will often ask the question, well, does the world need saving? So look, this is the image that Edgar Mitchell, the photos that he took on the Apollo 14 space mission. And when it was seen, people all over the world were absolutely, totally awestruck because it was the very first image ever taken of the Earth from outside of the Earth. And I can actually remember when those photos came out. Um, I'd like to say I was only 6, but I wasn't. I was in my 20s. But wonderful, awesome images to be able to look. And people looked and saw, that is my home. That's where we collectively as humanity, where we live. And the standing outside of it, away from it, and that we were all outside of it, gave us a sense of connection. And of course, we know from quantum physics that we are all interconnected in the quantum field. We're all interconnected, but it gives a totally different perspective to see Earth from this point of view. And Paul Hawken said, the one simple, this is about our times now, the one simple overarching fact to understand about the state of today's environment is that all the basic life support systems on Earth are in serious and accelerating decline. I'm just going to say that again. All the basic life support systems on Earth are in serious and accelerating decline. Now, he said that in his book, Blessed Unrest, and he wrote that quite a few years ago. And so if it was in serious and accelerating decline then, it's in a worse state now. And so, much has been written about the climate change, pollution, the ozone layer, all the waste, the droughts, the fires, the floods, the melting of the polar ice cap, the rising tides, and all the knock-on effects that all of those things have on each other. And yes, it is in serious and accelerating decline. And the reason why I'm making this webinar at the moment is because we're, as it happens, in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. And the whole world has come to a halt. All the industry, people, I'm isolated at the moment. The hotels are closed down. Everybody's in lockdown all over Europe and America, China, pretty well all over the world. And that has all happened in a matter of weeks. And actually, in that short space of time, the pollution certainly around China in particular, has reduced dramatically. And, you know, people are reporting the water in the canals in Venice running clear and fish being seen for the first time, and there are swans there. And, you know, amazing things are happening because humanity has stopped doing what humanity has been doing. But I'm getting sidetracked there. Really, what we're looking at here is a paradigm shift. Hopefully, that's what's going to come out of this. I'm hoping that we will have a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is from the one that we've been living in for the last few hundred years, where we approach life and the world from a position of lack and struggle and pain, and the only way to get anywhere is to work hard, and everything revolves around working hard, getting money, getting more. And, you know, there is another paradigm of ease and abundance and joy. So the old paradigm is based on all the Newtonian Cartesian cause and effect, mechanistic way of viewing the world and people and everything in it. And we know now from quantum physics, and, you know, I'm just kind of highlighting this, that there is another way of living, and that it's an inside job, basically. So we need not just a paradigm, we need a mind shift, a mindset shift, and we need a worldview shift to get ourselves from experiencing life in terms of lack and struggle and pain to one of ease and abundance and joy. So just stay with me and I'll say more. So one of the things I want to say is why we need to not go back to business as usual when this pandemic blows over. And, you know, I will say why we need to not go back to usual. Business as usual. People are saying, oh, we'll all be good, we'll get back to business as usual. And I'm saying, no, we need to not do that. And so bear with me. So much of what I'm about to say is based on Joanna Macy's books that she's written, in particular, Act of Hope. And I recommend that you get a copy and read it. And the basic message of Act of Hope is that whatever situation we face, we can choose our response. I'll say that again. We can choose our response. Now, we can get reactive and run around like headless chickens, which half the people in the world are doing, because they're frightened and they're scared and they don't know what else to do. And so they're reacting here in the UK, but I believe in the US and across Europe as well. People are, you know, have got supermarkets stripped of goods because they're panic buying. And they're just being reactive. We can choose to be responsive. Some great person said, between the stimulus and the response, there is a gap, and therein destinies are formed. But actually, what people are doing is there's no gap, they're just reacting, and there is no gap to reflect and decide what's my response going to be. So as I go through this, I want you to understand you can choose what your response is going to be. And Joanna Macy flags up 3 common responses. And one is, and it's the most common one, is business as usual. Actually, people I have noticed and observed for the last few weeks since this coronavirus pandemic has, you know, blown up, people set off with, no, it's going to be business as usual, and people have tried to do what they have always done and tried to stick to their normal routine. Of course, this has been such an upheaval of such a scale that people have not been able to do that. And it's not business as usual. You know, the pubs, clubs, restaurants, schools, churches, everything is on lockdown, and it is definitely not business as usual. And I'll say more about that shortly. The other thing that how people have, this is not just about the pandemic. This is about life generally before the pandemic. It's been business as usual. The Great Unraveling is another response where many people look and see what's happening with the planet, with the climate and all the negative outcomes of that, but they just feel it's too much. They don't know what to do. And then there's the Great Turning, those growing numbers of people who believe and are working towards that there is going to be a great turning. And many of us, myself included, can see that this pandemic is actually something of a catalyst to help that to get underway. But watch this space. So before I carry on, I want to just flag this up to you. This is what Joanna says. She says, to play our best part, we have to counter the voices that say we're not up to the task, that we're not good enough, strong enough, or wise enough to make any difference. You know, we all feel, most of us watching this, if not all of us watching this, that the task is so great, what needs to happen, what needs to be done to not get us back to business as usual, but to actually take us forward to a new threshold. Most of us feel that we're not up to the task, that we're definitely not good enough or strong enough or wise enough to make any difference. And I will say that my basic default position in life as a younger woman and until recent years has been to feel that those things, well, I'm not good enough, strong enough, wise enough to make any difference. But I realize now that that's not true. And I'm saying to you, as we go through this, I want you to listen and understand it's not true. We all have a part to play. It's like a jigsaw. We all have our own piece, and the picture will not be complete without our piece. So the core assumptions of the business as usual response is everything revolves around the economy. Everything is about economic growth. And like this has been for the last few decades, since post-war. Business as usual has been about growing the economy. It's been about consumerism, because if the economy is going to grow, then we have to consume more, buy more, get more, have more, get bigger, get better. And of course that involves working harder, and that's a bit of a struggle to keep up with the Joneses. And of course all that consumerism, all that new stuff that we get creates more waste, more greenhouse gases, it's more transportation costs, and a lot of marketing and PR goes into encouraging us to buy more. It's targeted at children, because children go with their parents shopping and they say, oh, please, can't we have, why not? And the marketing is targeted to them, and they wear their parents down. The beef industry, it takes something like 3,500 gallons of water to create 1 kilogram of beef. And you know, there's a soybean connection, Google it. Nature, according to the business as usual model, nature is a commodity to be used, and that includes all the plants, the forests, the rivers, the seas, the animals. Everything is there to be used, to be drilled, to be mined, and then to be used as a sewer. And that is the way it is on this earth and has been since post-war. And the other assumption that goes with this model is other people and nations are not our concern. Whatever difficulties or problems other countries and other people have, it's got nothing to do with us. It's not our problem, it's not our concern, and we don't have to do anything about it. So that's the core assumptions of the business as usual model. I can remember as a child, I was born just after the war, and those first early years, it was before the days of plastic. There wasn't any plastic. In fact, most houses where I live, we didn't have electricity. Once we had domestic electricity, of course, in the 50s, that was the era when then we got all the household appliances, vacuum cleaners, fridges, and washing machines and tumble dryers. Well, we didn't have tumble dryers then, but you know, that was the beginning of it. I can remember seeing my first biro, which was plastic, and thinking it was like a magic wand. It was wonderful. And then as a young woman growing up, we had Tupperware to store all our food and make sandwiches for picnics, and you to store everything. That was all new, and it made life so much easier, particularly for women. And we all thought it was wonderful, all these labor-saving devices. And then, of course, more recently, we've had plastic water bottles and all the disposable throwaway things, the wet wipes and all the rest of it. And, you know, it all made life easier. And mostly, none of us thought, where is it going? We assumed it went in that magic place where waste products and rubbish gets disposed of somehow. We didn't think about it not being biodegradable. And even years ago, when people started to talk about the waste dumps and, you know, it being exported to third world countries, like it was something that was happening in a movie or something. It didn't quite register. So this has crept up on us over the last, well, 70, 60, 70 years. And certainly in the last 50 years, it has just escalated and got out of hand. So I'm not actually pointing the finger or blaming anybody. Collectively around the world, we have created this. And I have to say, some countries more than others, but actually it doesn't help to blame this country, that country, or another country. Collectively, we've created the difficulties. So I'm trying to get this to move on. So we're suffering from a bad case of affluenza. In the last 50 years, we have bought and used, more resources have been consumed in the last 50 years than all preceding history. And yet, we are not any happier. And how do I know that we're not any happier? Because we have 800,000 suicides a year. And those figures come from the World Health Organization. So in spite of buying and consuming more products in the last 50 years than all previous history, in spite of all that stuff, we have 800,000 suicides a year. That's not in total, that's a year. So there are indications, the World Health Organization says, that for each adult who died by suicide, there may have been more than 20 others attempting suicide. So even if we just take the 20 others, that's 16 million a year people not wanting to live. Now that is a huge problem. The people of this world have been living in. And I want to say loud and clear, this is not a mental health issue. Clearly people have got mental health issues. Many people have, but the core issue is not their mental health. The core issue is how we've all been living. The paradigm that we're living in that revolves around economic growth and having more, getting more, bigger, better, and that whole hamster wheel that the whole world is caught up in. And people are soul sick. People are soul sick. They feel disconnected. They feel like they don't belong. Everybody is caught up in this game of let's have more. And it's killing them. It's killing them. It's killing you probably who are watching this. And it is definitely killing our planet. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the business of war. I don't want this to be too long. The business of war, I'm here in the UK, so I'm speaking from the point of view of the UK. But whichever country you live in, it's easy to think that it's all the people over there or in that other country who are all caught up in wars, and it hasn't got anything to do with us. And I'm just saying, here in the UK, since the Second World War, so even when the war was over, all of these countries are countries where the UK has been either at war or involved in military operations. I'm just saying, you know, yep, it's been going on. The military spending for 2018, here's the military spending. This is the US, 649 billion. These are all billion. China, 250 billion. I'm not going to call these all out. Here's the United Kingdom's 50 billion. And there are more that are not on this chart. But altogether, it adds up to about 1.5 trillion in 1 year. In 1 year, $1.5 trillion spent on war, or the whole war machinery, or arms creation and distribution, and actually being in wars, and the whole paraphernalia that goes with it. It would actually cost about 10 billion to provide clean water for the 70 billion people who haven't got it in this world. So a drop in the ocean of the amount that's being spent in 1 year on war. We do need to stop and think, all the people that we're voting for, all the people who are governing us, no matter what country we're in, whether it's the US, the UK, all around Europe, this is the spending that's happening. Mammoth amounts of money on war. So war makes a few people extremely rich and serves the interests of corporations, governments, and strategists, and it brings misery to millions. Millions and millions and millions of people have had their homes wrecked, taken away, killed. Millions of orphans. Refugees are it's a mammoth problem, and particular coming out of the Middle East. And, you know, all of us who are creating arms are sending arms, and it doesn't matter who we're sending them to, we're sending them, and people are using them. They are made to kill people with and to create homeless people. That is what's happening. And that's part of our business as usual. Cilla Elworthy said, those who thrive in war are not only arms manufacturers, but also people traffickers, arms smugglers, money launderers, drug dealers, and others who require a lawless environment to make a fortune. And what I want to say as well, in pretty well most of these wars going on, it is considered a weapon of war to rape the women. And millions of women are being raped routinely, regularly, as part of all of the wars that are going on. It doesn't matter what side we're on. There's loads of women getting caught up in being used and abused and trafficked and all the rest of it, all the rest of this stuff. But, you know, we get caught up in our little bubble, in our own comfortable lives and homes, and it's sort of all happening over there somewhere. But this is business as usual. This is what's happening. So the second response out of the three responses that go on to the business as usual is the whole group of people, and probably a lot of you are those people, who see what's happening, can see the economic decline, can see that this whole economy growth, that's the main thing. You know, from the 2008 recession, when the banks got into a real mess, it was clear it wasn't working. We went into quite a decline then, and by we're going into another one now because of the pandemic, but it was probably happening anyway. Resource depletion, all that drilling for mining for fossil fuel, oil, drilling in the seas, climate change. There was, you know, about 70% of our insects are gone, 50% of our forests have gone, about 70 or 80%, I think it is, of the fish in our rivers are gone, and it's escalating. And as well as that, we have social division in that the small number of people who are making a lot of money from war and the whole economy thing, there's huge poverty. Something like the top 20 billionaires in the world own as much as like pretty well most of the other people in the world put together. And there is mass extinction of species happening. The bees, who are very important for the fertilization of plants and a lot of other things, are you know, they're dying off. So one of the things is the people who do see that, who have not closed their eyes to it, they see it. They see it's not right. They feel like something should be done about it. And actually, that would have been my position up until a few years ago. I would see it and think that that's not right. And I would feel angry about it. But I somehow thought there's somebody else who knows more, who's wiser than I am, who's more competent and capable than I am. And all those people somewhere else will sort it out. But I've lived long enough now to know it's not getting sorted out. Not only is it not getting sorted out, it's getting worse. And actually, when something like this pandemic happens and we're totally running on reserves, and all the human activity stops, all that keeping the economy going, when it stops, you see we've got clean air. The fish are breeding again. You know, that things are changing in a matter of weeks. So what is it that stops people like me and you from actually getting up and standing up and speaking up and saying the emperors have no clothes on? So part of it is we feel absolutely overwhelmed. We just feel overwhelmed and we don't know what to do. And so here's some of the thoughts that we have, because we feel in our heart about how it's not okay, the animals and the forests all being cleared and killed and seen off. We know in our hearts it's not right, but because we can't stand that feeling, we go to our heads and we come up with these thoughts. And here some of the thoughts are, well, I don't believe it's that dangerous. And that's what people are saying, have been saying for weeks about the pandemic. And, you know, the numbers who are dying are escalating. You know, I don't believe it's that dangerous. It isn't my job to sort this out. It's not my job. Somebody else's. Oh, I don't want to draw attention to myself, because actually people who do feel strongly about it, who do feel like speaking out and speaking up, but they are not too sure of themselves and they don't want to feel stupid and they don't want people to reject them, and they don't want, they don't want to feel silly, and they are self-conscious. And they think, well, if I speak up about this, it may threaten my business or political interests. So somebody might not agree with me. The people on the left might not agree, or the people on the right might not agree. So I'll just keep my mouth shut and I'll just sit on the fence. And actually, the reality is their business is being threatened anyway. And, you know, finally the old, oh, well, I'd prefer not to think about it. You know, I'll just, um, it's what I call the Scarlett O'Hara syndrome. And like that would have been my default position. I'll worry about Tara tomorrow. Tara is burning down. I need to think about it, but it's another day tomorrow and I'll worry about it then. I'd prefer not to think about it now. So it's up to you now to think which one of those is your pet position that you go to, because that response, or blocked response, that's what keeps you from actually stopping and saying the emperor has no clothes on. All these people who are running the world and who are really getting in a mess with it, they are going around naked telling us they have beautiful golden suits, and they have not. They have not. And it is time to, now this pandemic has given us an opportunity. It's time for us to stop and examine where we've been with all of this, and what are these ways that we block our response, to think, well, perhaps there is something I might be able to do. And I'm going to say more about that in a minute, because we do finish up with, I don't know what to do. Now, one of the things is, when we all go to that place, of, I don't know what to do. And that I don't know what to do feeling, it's a feeling, but it's a thought, but it's attached to the feeling of powerlessness, of helplessness, and hopelessness. And those feelings don't feel very good at all. But we acquire those feelings when we are very little. You know, before we ever go to school, there will be times when we hurt ourselves, or somebody tells us off, or says no, and times that, maybe we feel sick or ill or something. Just ordinary things that happen to young children. There's times when we feel, I don't know what to do. And that helpless and powerless and hopeless feelings will come with them. Now, at times like what we're going through now, those feelings get triggered, and we're feeling it in the present, and a lot of it has to do with the present, but a lot of it is feelings of being a helpless child that get triggered. And so we distract ourselves. We go about being busy, and, you know, oh, right, well, we've got to get back to normal. We've got to get back to business as usual. And we'll do. We become human doings and not human beings. So that's the first two things, the business as usual, um, and the great unraveling, where we're gone into economic decline, that whole boom and bust thing, the whole capitalism thing, the whole economic growth thing, where we're up and down. One minute our houses have kind of rocketed up in value, and then it's all hit the skids, and you know, the value's all lost in it. People have lost hundreds of billions of pounds um, in the last few weeks, and it's up and down like that. And we have, you and me, the ordinary people of this world, and particularly the women, need to stop and think. So the third dimension, which Joanna Macy refers to as the Great Turning, she talks about three dimensions of the Great Turning, and that is the hope that many of us have, that it can be and it will be turned around, but it requires huge numbers of people to become awake, to become aware of what's going on, and to get past these feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. So for things to turn around, we do all need to get into some alignment. And Joanna talks about holding actions, the three dimensions of this is holding actions, which is activism, structural change, and a shift in consciousness. And you can see that each of those things, it's not in a sequence, it's constantly interdependent. And the Great Turning, which is about turning the industrial growth society, which is all built on the notion of economic growth and the invisible hand of the market, and life is dying all around us, the plant life, the animal life, and human life, we're all dying. And now literally with this pandemic, we need to be looking to turn it around to a life-sustaining society. So the three dimensions of this is the holding actions, and that would be groups like Extinction Rebellion, who are activists. And now most people, no, I don't know about most people, many people, and particularly many older people, take a hostile view of groups like Extinction Rebellion, simply because they perceive them as being a nuisance. They do sit-ins, they sit up trees, they block diggers, they block, you know, deforestation because they sit in the trees, and they sit in and block the traffic in city centres. And I have heard many people complaining about them and what a nuisance they are. And actually, I just want to say to you now, those people are helping to save your world and save your life, probably. And they are not being a nuisance. They are taking action to try to slow down the total carnage that's going on. So that's a whole set of actions. The structural changes, I'll say more about that in a moment, and the shift in consciousness. So the holding actions, as I said, it's about mobilizing people. Now, at the moment, there are over 2 million organizations around the world who are engaged in sustainability of some kind or another. And you know, that's quite a lot, but when you look at total populations, we need more. We need more people, and those organizations are interconnected. And people like, I would encourage you to check out the Bioneers, of whom Joanna Macy is one of their key members, who connect with these organizations, and they are being mobilized, and they are engaged in sustainability. Now, the thing about sustainability is this: sustainability is about not using any more than can be, put back in a reasonable amount of time. The point is, we have gone past sustainability. If 50% of the trees the forests have been cleared, can that be restored? I mean, it took hundreds of years for many of those trees to grow. So, but we've got to start somewhere. And there are, amongst these organizations, there are a lot of good people who have started, particularly, I think, in India, planting millions of trees, which are badly needed because the hothouse gases are building up because we have lost those trees which protected us from those things. So I have more to say about this in other videos. We need structural change, like creating more life-sustaining systems and practices. The banking systems need to be changed from, all that investment in banks. It's all finding its way probably into the arms trades. And it's keeping all this death and destruction going. Something like Triados is a bank that the money is invested in things like organic farming, restructuring how the world is run in terms of our food supply and social enterprises and many other things. Too much to mention in this webinar, but we need different people to be focused on creating structural change. And then we need a shift in consciousness. And actually this video, and webinar that I've created, is really about that. I am interested in raising self-awareness. That's my kind of part of the puzzle, to raise women's awareness about what they can do in the world and what's going on in the world. And we absolutely need to have a shift in consciousness away from, oh, I don't know what to do, away from, oh, there is no problem, it's all fake news, it's all made up. I think we're beginning to say it's not made up and it's not fake news. And anybody with half a brain cell can say it's not. We need to shake ourselves out of the denial that we've been sitting in. And so, as Joanna Macy says, we live at a time when a new view of reality is emerging, where spiritual insight and scientific discovery both contribute to our understanding of ourselves as intimately interwoven with our world. I'm going to say that again because there's quite a bit in that one little statement. We live at a time when a new view of reality is emerging, and it is emerging. And you need to decide, are you going to join it, this new view of reality, where spiritual insight and scientific discovery both contribute to our understanding of ourselves as intimately interwoven with our world. So future generations will look at the time we are living in now, the kind of future they look from, and the story they tell about our period will be shaped by choices we, that means you and me, make in our lifetimes now. And this is a big turning point for people at the moment, where we have got time now, because most people can't carry on working, have got time to stop. I would encourage you, if anything that I've said resonates with you, please share this video, pass it on, and encourage other women that you know, and men as well, good men, to stop and look at the future generations who will look at the time we're living in now, the kind of future that they look from, and the story they tell about this period and us will be shaped by the choices that we make in our lifetimes now. And we need to think very carefully about the choices that we make. And we need to make them conscious choices. We really need to stop and think. We need to look at our voting habits, who we vote for, why we vote for them. Do we vote for parties just because, well, they're not going to cut tax and it'll be more money in my pocket? Never mind if they're wrecking the whole planet. So a certain bunch of people will have a bit more money. It's time in our choices to think about the good of the whole and not just the one. We have to think of the many, and think, what kind of a world are our children going to be inheriting? What kind of a mess are we leaving for them? And, you know, this is not scaremongering. Just look at the facts. So, our despair for the world, Joanna says, by speaking our concerns and giving voice to our feelings, we make them more visible, not just to others, but to ourselves as well. I know I'm in my 70s now, and for sure, well into my 60s, I was definitely either in the business as usual group, and then gradually um, started to notice what was going on around me and started to feel a bit angry about it and started to see the damage it was doing to people and the world and for future generations as well. And gradually the scales have fallen off my eyes, and I can see the millions of refugees, the millions of homeless, the islands of rubbish in the sea, and all the sea life that is killed from swallowing it, and how it's all getting in the food chain, and all the weird and wonderful illnesses that we're getting as a result. So we do need to be able to speak our concerns, and this is not being negative, it's not scaremongering. People are worried, people are concerned, people need to be able to stand up and speak out and be bold. We need to be bold about how we feel about the world, and not all those list of thoughts that I'd said earlier. Um, uh, don't be concerned about what people think. You need to keep your own integrity and go to your heart, go inside, not out there, go inside your own heart. Make that journey from your head to your heart, not what your head says. What does your heart say? And I know most of you watching this, your heart will tell you this is not okay. This needs to change. And you, my friend, can be part of the change. You can be part of the great turning. So here's a few things. I just want you to note these down or pause the video. These are things that would be useful for you to reflect on and to journal. And so they're just little sentence stems for you to reflect on. So you get in touch with your heart, you get in touch with your feelings, and you don't keep dismissing them and sweeping them aside. Actually, pay attention to yourself. Be self-aware. So one of my worst fears, this is what I want you to consider, one of my worst fears about the future is, and you fill in the blank. When I imagine the world we will leave our children, you fill in the blank. The feelings I carry around with me are, and this is really something to drill down, to look at, ways I avoid these feelings are, how do you avoid feeling those feelings? Now, for many of you, it's being busy, busy running a business, trying to make it bigger, expand, get more money, you know, all the things that we do. Uh, Maybe we worry, maybe we get anxious, maybe we feel sad. I don't know, but how do you block that all out? And some ways I can use these feelings are, you see, once you actually take the time to pay attention and you set the intention to pay attention and you pay attention to what you're blocking off, once you've done that, and if you write it down, you're expressing it. You're not suppressing it, you're not repressing it, because when you suppress and repress, you get depressed. But when you take time to actually pay attention to yourself, listen to yourself, write it down, reflect on it, then you have the power. And I'm going to say more about that in another video. Then you release the power to use these feelings. So some ways I can use these feelings are, so just take time when you've finished with this, take time to reflect on those questions. So what can I do is what you're left with. And I will be doing another webinar to follow up on this one, and it will be setting out in much more detail what you, the average woman, the average person, can do to address the situation that we're in at the moment. And actually, we really need to, we can't do it on our own. We absolutely need to get together. And the Dalai Lama said, the world will be saved by Western women, but it won't be by individuals. It will be by Western women getting into alignment with each other. So I have a Western Women Mean Business online. If you would care to sign up, there's a free membership, you can sign up. And once I see that there's sufficient numbers of you, I will be putting more programs and webinars on for your personal growth and development, which is one of the things that you need to do. So that is the website address. Please, please take some action. Bye for now.